Imagine this. A person walks up to you on the streets and asks,
"Can I have your email address?"
The answer's clear, but what if we change the context a little? Now imagine that same person walking up to you, but first they ask this.
"Do you consider yourself an adventurous person?"
Well, now you're thinking about you. Skydiving, risky things, the thrill, the rush. And now they ask you for your email. Why would that matter? Why would an Italian restaurant put a $3,000 Vespa on their menu to sell more food? How does a warm cup of coffee alter our impressions on the world and strangers we meet? Is it possible that the most compelling aspect to an offer, a product, a service, an experience, isn't the rational benefits of it, but the context in which it's pitched? That's the underlying premise in the book Persuasion, that what happens before the ask is more important than the ask itself. So let's jump into the book, explain how persuasion works, and then we'll give you a few ways you can take these findings back to your firm. Ready? Let's do this.
Do you like to read books? Would you rather someone else do the reading? Well, Jake and Paul read a book. And now you have to hear about it. It's the Lawsome Book Report.
Dr. Robert Cialdini, who's the author of Persuasion, today's book, has spent his life studying influence and persuasion. He is the Regents Professor Emeritus Psychology and Marketing at Arizona State University and has been a visiting professor of marketing, business, and psychology at Stanford University, as well as at the University of California at Santa Cruz. His 1984 breakout book, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, had the premise that in a complex world where people are overloaded with more information than they can deal with, people fall back on a decision-making approach based on generalizations rather than the most rational idea. He gave 5 generalizations: reciprocation, consistency, social proof, authority, scarcity. These generalizations develop because they allow people to usually act in an acceptable manner with a limited amount of thought and time. However, these generalizations can be exploited and effectively turned into weapons by those who know them to influence others to act in certain ways. The findings in Cialdini's 1984 book are backed up by numerous empirical studies conducted in the fields of psychology, marketing, economics, anthropology, and social science. Building on his research into human behaviors, his 2016 book, Persuasion, A Revolutionary Way to Influence People and Persuade, explains how people can be persuaded to be receptive to a message before they experience via context and cues that work in concert with the generalizations that he discovered in the 80s. Optimal persuasion is achieved only through optimal persuasion. In other words, to change minds, a persuader must also change states of mind. So let's cover what persuasion is and provide a few examples of it, and then outline ways you can take it into your law firm.
All right. Persuasion is the process of arranging for recipients to be receptive to a message before they encounter it. Studying top sales teams across several industries, Cialdini discovered that they all focused on the moment before they pitched. They recognized the psychological frame in which an appeal is first placed can carry equal weight with the legitimate merits of an offer. So, what are some examples of persuasive techniques? Example 1, frames. You set the bar high. An Italian restaurant with a $3,000 Vespa scooter on the menu is more likely to sell even the most pricey of entrees because compared to the scooter, it's a bargain. Example 2, Bolkin and Anderson. It's a behavior experiment in which people were approached on the street to take a survey. 29% said yes. A second group was asked first if they would consider themselves to be a helpful person. 77% then completed the survey. Example 2 is also Bolkin and Anderson. They asked for an email address. Very few people put it down. But then they were first asked, "Are you adventurous?" 97% said yes, and of that, 75% gave an email. And the final example, number 3, coffee in hand. Behavior scientists ran a set of experiments in which participants had to rate a stranger's personality during a brief face-to-face meeting. Now, one group of participants was given an ice beverage to hold during the meeting, the other group a hot one. What they found was that there was a significant difference between the two groups. The participants that held the hot coffee saw person A as being more generous, sociable, and warm.
So it makes you wonder, why is this? How does this change the way we perceive? We're holding a cup of coffee. How can you actually see a stranger in a different way? And so Cialdini explains through a couple ideas, salience, and then another concept, which Daniel Kahneman, who's a noted psychologist, called the focusing illusion. So timing and context is everything. You can have a good idea, a great ad, but if the timing is off or the context isn't right for the offer, it's a losing bet. So frequently, the factor most likely to determine a person's choice in a situation is not the one that counsels most wisely. It is the one that has been elevated in attention at the time of decision. This is the focusing illusion. It's been studied by psychologists the world over, but none have described it better than Daniel Kahneman. And it's just this sentence. Nothing in life is as important as you think it is while you're thinking about it. So marketers have been trying to find new ways to hack into the focusing illusion forever. And that's why persuasion is so great. Persuasion, or priming an audience and altering what's salient inside someone's mind, is the new and also extremely ancient field of persuasion. Look at political advertising. The 2 or so weeks before an election, it's a stampede of messaging, which now can be hyper-personalized to the user's political biases, because everyone wants their agenda to be the one that stays in the minds of the voters as they head to the polls. That's why big brands advertise, and it seems a waste of money. They set the scene in your head with their ads. And so it's your brain, which is packed full with a confetti of notable brands, jingles, slogans, cool and memorable concepts you've decided to hold on to, that the advertisers aim for. They just need to set the scene and stack the memory decks, and then you'll make the most salient decision once you get to the store. The idea in marketing is to channel the attention. You can channel it with words, copies, ads, your staff and client experience in your law firm. These persuasive techniques can be used everywhere. So how can you apply persuasion at your law firm?
Reciprocation. People say yes to those they owe. So give them value up front, concessions, advantages, give it away.
Are there guides on your practice area of law? Give it away. Empowering but legally sanctioned, distinct legal marketing content like books. Give it away. PDFs. Give it away. Coloring books. Give it away. Webinars, video NARs, any NAR. Give it away.
Authority. Rather than succumbing to the tendency to mention all of the most favorable features of a service, studies show that a communicator who references a weakness early on is immediately seen as more honest. So how can you use it?
Rather than promoting the perfect examples of your service, share the difficulties of your work, the struggles you overcame. Mention your struggles, and clients may be willing to fight them with you when they sign.
Scarcity. We want more of what we can have less of. Limits increase demand. We are loss averse more than gain oriented. How do you use it?
So is it possible that maybe you could limit your consultations a month or your caseload and mention that in your marketing? Is it possible to set limits for your firm and use those to your advantage?
Kinship. One key to persuade, is that persuasion or persuasion?
It is persuasion.
Okay, sorry. Kinship. One key to persuasion is a perceived merging of identities. When familial language is used, brotherhood, heritage, motherhood, this strengthens associations. How can you use it?
Your ad copy can be loose, maybe a little bit more loose than you have it. You can mention people, show faces, share stories, bring out the connection underlying your legal services. Sort of highlight that human-to-human interaction. If your message revolves around this service angle, it won't be marketing BS for much longer.
Music. Music, along with being a fantastic vehicle for memory, possesses a rare synchronizing power. Listeners can easily become aligned with motor, sensory, vocal, and emotional dimensions, leading to self-other merging, social cohesion, and supportive conduct. So how can you use it?
Jingles, songs can be very powerful in advertising, and I think there's room here in legal, but it has to be paired with the right creative and context. It's easy to think that it's cheesy and that the cheese doesn't belong in your law firm, and I get it, we get it, but the cheese most definitely belongs in the advertising for your law firm, and I think that's the key to the whole episode. So in conclusion, Paul, we both read this book. I think that like the jingles and the cheesiness and this idea that we can kind of persuade people and influence, it's either really exciting or it's terrifying, or it's something that just seems so crazy that there's no way that I can apply it, to my marketing. I hope some of the examples we gave inspire some ideas, but I think my hot take from this whole thing is that I would hope that law firm owners, legal marketers separate two things: the way their law firm is and the way it delivers services, and the way you advertise. Because your advertising has to adhere to principles that aren't necessarily happening at your business management level. And I think management and marketing gets a little crossed, and then you don't do the best advertising you could possibly do because you're making it more rational. You're making it more about features and benefits and less about the service. You know what I mean? So that's what I would hope people would separate the two. And then you could think of Persuasion as a great marketing vehicle or something you can pursue in an advertising and marketing effort to develop business for your law firm. And it isn't inherently your law firm. Your advertising just drives people in there, and then you do that good law, capture it. So my thought is this is great. And me and you kind of go back and forth, but I thought this book was great. And then I thought it was a bit of BS. And now I'm back to thinking it's good. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah, there was stuff I didn't agree with, but I do want to say I agree with you about advertising. And I've really come at this, I've written probably thousands of ads. I very much have that advertising mindset. And whenever I read a book like this, or, Hey Whipple Squeeze This, or, Ogilvy Confessions of an Ad Man, it's really easy to look at these things and be like, well, that's great. If you're selling, detergent,
soap,
or something like that. I mean, it's always
good. Yeah.
But the point is, what we're talking about here are concepts. These are ways to make your advertising more effective, how to impact and reach people in a better way than your competitors are, how to set your ad apart, make it relevant and memorable. And that's really something that it doesn't matter what you're selling or what you're trying to get people to remember or recall when they do need it. And to me, that's the most important thing in this book, is that you have a window where you can maximize the importance of your message over everything else, because people can only process so much at one time. So by setting these things up the proper way, to me, one of the most powerful examples was actually at the beginning of the book. Was when he talked about the salesman, the guy who did door-to-door sales. Yeah. And he shadowed. It's fascinating. I mean, this is one of these things, like, it might be weird for lawyers, but you got to check it out, where he followed top sales producers, and shadowed these people and talked to them. And this one guy who was doing door-to-door sales, he said he would get in the house and then he would say, "Oh, I left something in my car. I got to go back. Like, is it okay if I?" And they would say, "Yeah." And he said, inevitably, that's the thing. And they were like, why is that so effective? Who cares if you left something in your car? He said, it's not about that. It's that they trusted me to leave their house and come back in without an escort. that immediately sets this bar of trust. At a certain point now in their head, they trust me more. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, those are the kind of things where does it, are you going to be walking into someone's living room and trying to sell them your law firm services? No. But can you start to work on concepts like building up trust, expectation, and delivery of results?
Even
A
before
lot of the stuff. I mean, Jake, how many times have you and I talked about advertising being like music? We're very familiar with music, call and response. When this happens, when if I've set things up, verse, chorus, the next time the verse happens, people expect the chorus, right?
So it's expectations, but it's also connecting experience,
Yes.
and service, and then connecting that to branding, and then connecting that to advertising. And so there's a kind of quilt where we're getting into the middle. We're looming over the quilt. But I wanted to get, before we get out, I wanted to talk to you about what you didn't agree with. You said there was a little confirmation bias, and then this focusing illusion, because I think that is the biggest story there, is that your audience can't focus on more than one thing at a time. Yep. And so it's your duty to maybe, what's your thought there? And just unpack what your problem was with the book, and then how that focusing illusion thing kind of plays out.
Yeah, so again, I'm kind of skeptical about some of these things. Confirmation bias, it seems like if you're looking, some of the things that he wrote about, like, I was able to get more writing done, at home looking out the window, as opposed to, in my office at school looking out the window, or I don't know, maybe it was vice versa. But that was just one of those things I was like, that's okay. I mean, I get what you're saying, but in a book that is so heavily reliant upon data,
right, the little anecdotal
like those things where he was like, I felt like I did more. Like this book, this whole premise of this book, I don't. You didn't really set up a study for that, did you?
Isn't it interesting, though, that anecdotes are the things we're trying to gather from our clients to then gauge our experience? So that's the two-headed dragon of, I can either believe what I can track, or I can believe what you say.
But it would have been different if he had said, I wrote more when someone gave me a hot cup of coffee, as opposed to when someone gave me a cold beverage. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just,
he would have connected, things, right?
Yeah. Well, I just kind of, it felt like a little bit of a reach. I guess that's something, again, going back to that advertiser, and something you and I really, hammer away on, is editing, taking out, let people, fill in those parts of the story themselves, because they will. So I just felt that was very unnecessary for him in here to be like, oh, and in my own experience, or I found this little thing that supports what I just said, but doesn't really jive with a lot of everything else in here, which is really, really good. I thought it was fascinating that they were going in and doing these surveys in a mall. And the survey, like, they didn't even care what was on the survey. The whole test was to see who would take it or not. I mean, that's fascinating,
Yeah.
So what did you think? So, but we kind of disagree on that. So what do you think?
No. I don't think we disagree. I agree. I would wonder if he put the anecdotes in there to build out some of those generalizations that, you got all this science, but there was actually something that happened in his life. So it's a little bit of social proof. It's a little bit of authority. He's using some of the generalizations. And the big takeaway is that people aren't making choices based on rational decisions.
No.
They're cutting corners, they're generalizing, and to understand how they generalize and then use that in concert with your advertising or marketing, but in a way that mirrors the experience and service of your firm. Then you're not being facetious, and you're not using smoke and mirrors. You're just using mirrors. And then people can see themselves, like you were saying, in the advertising, in the marketing, and they can fall into it because it's a promise that focuses on that service. And that's why it's cool that I think it's okay that he added that anecdote, because it gives you that human angle, and maybe that's what people are looking for. But the reach, you said something about, I think it's all a reach. I think all of this is a reach. If you wanted to do good marketing and advertising, you'd have to reach a little bit. But, but you need to collect the data of your experience in your firm, and then you can use that to fill in your thoughts, because guaranteed, if you're running your business, you think you're doing the best job you can, and possibly ever, and so we overestimate a lot of things. Check in with it, ask questions, and then reach. I think there is a bit of reach that's okay. And so that's why this might even hit trial lawyers, and maybe there's a way that you can persuade folks in your demand situations, or a deposition, or there's some way that you can use this, and you probably already understand this on some deep humanistic level. But there's a way you can use it in marketing, and that's kind of what we were focusing in on. So I think it's great. Go pick up the book. Let's get out of here. Let's let people live their lives. What's your parting words?
My parting words are, this is wired into how people think, going back to when, the caveman days. It's a safety feature built into people that you can really only focus on one thing.
Great point.
And this is what takes advantage of that. And I think it's not. You just made a really great point about these windows and having a certain timing to it. Right. Because think about it, especially if you're doing like personal injury law. That's one of the complaints. Everybody says, man, how do you find people who are going to get into a car accident? Well, after someone gets into a car accident and before they hire a lawyer, that's that window. And that's where you need to start looking at these things and say, okay, well,
how can I
is there some groundwork I can lay? Is there some focus I can get? Is there something I can do a little bit ahead of time that maybe will, set the table for this person who needs my services to come and sit down and we can talk?
Exactly.
I think that's where this goes.
Nice, man. Yeah, totally agree.
Don't take my word for it.
But that's it. So, but don't take our word for it. Go and pick up this book in a library, or wherever you find your library, your book dealer, your trusted book dealer. Wherever you score good books.
Yeah.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsomepodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.